This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
The time is precisely 1:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Romesh Piris and read by Chandima Veerakorn. The headlines. The Prime Minister instructs officials to solve the administrative problems of some of the officials before the upcoming budget. The Foreign Secretaries of Sri Lanka and Thailand successfully conclude bilateral political consultations. The UN says Sri Lanka's swift recovery from economic crisis, an example to the world. Cabinet approval sought for daily allowance for answer script examiners. The Cabinet of Ministers approved to implement the simplified value-added tax system with effect from the 1st of January 2024. The Public Security Minister points out that the Police Department is working on a non-political agenda and committed to protecting the law and order at the highest level. On international news, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake strikes Bali Sea and Indonesia. In sports news, Lankan bodybuilders win bronze at the 56th IFBB Asian Championships held in Beirut, Lebanon. Local stories in detail. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena has instructed officials to solve the administrative problems of some of the officials before the upcoming budget. Premier Gunawardena issued directives during a meeting held at the Temple Trees to discuss the unresolved issues of some of the officials. The office of the Prime Minister said, during the meeting, trade unions stated that there is a delay in the implementation of the decisions taken during the discussions regarding issues that arose with the absorption of the Samudhi Authority into a department. Trade unions stated that the decision to charge an additional 4% interest fee in the payment of the 60% Provident Fund contribution owed to the government by the officers who expressed their preference under Section 44E11 while being absorbed into the Samudhi Department is unfair. Special attention was paid to several issues such as approval of the cadre of Samudhi Development Department. The Prime Minister stressed that at this moment of crisis, everyone's commitment is required to resolve these contemporary situations. The fifth round of the Sri Lanka and Thailand bilateral political consultations concluded at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Colombo recently. The Sri Lanka delegation was led by Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs Aruni Wijewardena, and the Thai delegation was headed by Permanent Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, Sarun Charoensawon. During the discussion, a wide range of areas of mutual collaboration in the fields of trade and investment, defence, culture, fisheries and tourism were reviewed for further progress. Foreign Secretary Wijewardena informed the Thai side that as Sri Lanka moved forward with the stabilization of its economy, it placed high priority on enhanced bilateral relations with Thailand as well as the broader ASEAN region. Sri Lanka has prioritized the conclusion of the Thailand-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. In addition, Sri Lanka intends to join the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, the world's largest free trade area that came into effect on the 1st of January 2022. As one of the 15 founding members of the RCEP, Foreign Secretary Wijewardena requested Thai support for Sri Lanka's application. The United Nations says as a country that quickly recovered among the 20 countries in the world that have fallen economically in the recent past, Sri Lanka should be set as an example. United Nations Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka, Marc-André Franche, commended the progress made by Sri Lanka in the past year. The UN Resident Coordinator noted that the Sri Lanka, a founding member of the United Nations, will be given maximum support for its activities. He further said that the UN Secretary-General also holds the same opinion. These remarks were made by United Nations Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka during a meeting with Minister of Justice Vijayadasa Rajapaksa. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with the local stories, during the Cabinet press briefing presented this morning at the Government Information Department, Mass Media Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena announced that the approval granted by the Cabinet of Ministers on the 5th of June 2023 to amend the Value Added Tax Act No. 14 of 2002 to a simplified value added tax system with effect from 1st of January 2024. The bill, prepared accordingly by the legal draftsman, has received the clearance of Attorney General. The proposal was presented by the President in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies to publish this bill in the Government Gazette and to submit consequently to Parliament for approval. Moreover, submission of orders under Section 107A of the Customs Ordinance, the Cabinet approval has been granted on 1st August 2022 to provide incentives to migrant workers to send remittances to Sri Lanka through legal channels. Accordingly, passengers' baggage exemption inwards, Order No. 1 of 2023 has been published in the Government Gazette by the Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policy in order to enforce the incentives granted by the Ministry of Labour and Foreign Employment under Section 107A of the Customs Ordinance. Public Security Minister Tiran Alas said that the government has taken steps to register all NGOs with the National Secretariat for NGOs and measures will be taken to prohibit any NGOs that are not registered. Minister Alas was speaking at the press conference held at the Presidential Media Centre under the theme Collective Path to a Stable Country. He said that necessary measures have been taken as a responsible government to stop hindrances to the lives of the people. He further stated that the program to suppress the underworld has already been implemented under the instructions given by the President, Ranil Wickremesinghe. The minister also pointed out that the police department is working on a non-political agenda and is always committed to protecting the law and order of the country at the highest level. To conclude the local news, the headlines again. The Prime Minister instructs officials to solve the administrative problems of some of the officials before the upcoming budget. The Foreign Secretaries of Sri Lanka and Thailand successfully conclude bilateral political consultations. The UN says Sri Lanka's swift recovery from economic crisis an example to the world. Cabinet approval sought for daily allowance for answer script examiners. The Cabinet of Ministers approved to implement the simplified value-added tax system with effect from 1st of January 2024. The Public Security Minister points out that the Police Department is working on a non-political agenda and is committed to protecting the law and order at the highest level. That concludes the local news for now.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Taking a look at the main news story, as there are a limited number of GCE ordinary level examination answer sheet review centres, arrangements have been made to give a daily allowance of 2,000 rupees to the answer sheet examiners who come from a long distance. As there are many regular examination centres set up all over the country, such problems do not arise for the GCE ordinary level examination answer sheet examiners. However, after considering the requests made by the teachers' trade unions, Education Minister Dr. Susil Premajanta said that they were also given 2 days official duty leave. In addition, a Cabinet memorandum has already been submitted regarding increasing the daily allowance of GCE ordinary level examination answer sheet examiners. That ends the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Watch Live is brought to you by
CIB Janajaya Vasana. Unbelievable discounts and offers throughout August from CIB Janajaya Vasana. Come today itself.
Taking a look at Watchlight, Sri Lanka has experienced a dramatic surge in HIV and AIDS cases during the second half of 2023, marking the highest number of cases reported in the single quarter since 2009. According to the National STD and AIDS Control Program, Sri Lanka has recorded 181 new HIV cases, reflecting a 9% increase compared to the previous quarter in 2022, which saw 165 cases. The second quarter ranges from April to June. This also represents a significant 39% increase compared to the second quarter of 2022, which had 130 cases. The male-to-female ratio of reported HIV cases in 2023 stands at 8.1 to 1. Furthermore, the second quarter has reported 13 deaths related to HIV and AIDS. That ends Watchlight.
CIB Janajaya Vasana. Unbelievable discounts and offers throughout August from CIB Janajaya Vasana. Come today itself.
We now take a look at the world news. The headlines. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake strikes Bali Sea and Indonesia. 3 hanged for Iraq bombing that killed more than 300 people. Workers at major Australia gas facilities to strike. A strong earthquake of 7.0 magnitude has struck deep in the sea north of Bali and Lombok Islands in Indonesia this morning. The European Mediterranean Seismological Center said quake's epicenter was 203 kilometers north of Mataram, Indonesia, and very deep at 516 kilometers below the Earth's surface. Indonesia's Climatology and Geophysical Agency said there was no danger of a tsunami but warned of dangers from aftershocks. Indonesia, a vast archipelago of 270 million people, is frequently struck by earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and tsunamis because of its location on the Ring of Fire, an arc of volcanoes and fault lines in the Pacific. Iraq has hanged 3 people convicted of involvement in a vehicle bombing in Baghdad that killed more than 300 people and injured hundreds in 2016. It was the deadliest single bombing in Iraq since the US-led invasion in 2003. The Islamic State group said it had carried out the attack. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's office did not name those executed or say when they had been sentenced. The executions were carried out on Sunday and Monday, it said. On 3rd July 2016, a vehicle filled with explosives was blown up next to a crowded shopping center in Karada, a mainly Shia Muslim area of the Iraqi capital. Workers at 2 large liquefied natural gas plants in Australia, operated by US energy giant Chevron, are set to go on strike from 7th September, in a move that could drive up global prices. This follows weeks of negotiations with unions over pay and working conditions. Wheatstone and Jordan sites produce more than 5% of the world's LNG. Fears of strikes recently pushed up wholesale gas prices in Europe. Around 500 workers are currently employed at the 2 Chevron facilities in Western Australia. To end the world news, the headlines again. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake strikes Bali Sea and Indonesia. 3 hanged for Iraq bombing that killed more than 300 people. Workers at major Australia gas facilities to strike. That ends the world news.
Development News is brought to you by
Job opportunities for well-experienced housemaids and home cooks in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait for ages 40 to 58 years. Salary 125,000 rupees. Contact 037 7500 500.
And on the development news, The total number of foreign nationals who have visited Sri Lanka this year is expected to surpass 900,000 shortly. Accordingly to data issued by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, as of 27th August, 891,198 tourists have visited the country this year. The total number of visitors to Sri Lanka during the entire 2022 stood at 719,978. More than 100,000 visitors each have arrived from India and Russia in 2023, while the number of visitors from the United Kingdom and Germany has surpassed 50,000 each. Meanwhile, more than 100,000 visitors each arrived in the country in the first 4 months of 2023. Moreover, according to SLTDA data, 123,285 tourists have visited Sri Lanka thus far in August. That ends the development news.
Job opportunities for women from Sri Lanka in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Oman. Housemaids and home cooks in Saudi Arabia, ages 40 to 58 years, Arabic speaking and well experienced home cooks. Salary 125,000 rupees. Interviews are now on with foreign agents. You can travel overseas free of charge now. Branches Colombo, Kurunegala, Anuradhapura and Matara. Contact number 0377 500 500. Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Agency.
Moving on to the sports news. Sri Lanka's 4-member bodybuilding team secured 2 bronze medals at the 56th International Fitness and Bodybuilding Federation Asian Championships held in Beirut, Lebanon. Subhash Dhanushka clinched bronze in the Classic Bodybuilding Championships, while Chamara Dias claimed bronze in the Over 50 Bodybuilding Championship. Minula Silva, an emerging talent for Sri Lanka, achieved a notable 4th place finish in the Junior Men's Classic Bodybuilding Championship and a remarkable 5th place finish in the Junior Men's Bodybuilding Championship. Iran's national bodybuilding team emerged as overall champions. Meanwhile, the Bureau of FIFA Council has decided to lift the suspension imposed on Football Federation of Sri Lanka with immediate effect. Accordingly, FIFA and the Asian Football Confederation will continue to monitor the Sri Lanka Football Federation election, which is scheduled to be held on the 29th of September. In January, the Bureau of the FIFA Council decided to suspend the Football Federation of Sri Lanka due to government interference. That ends the sports news.
Go ekak thiyana youth ekata life ekේ change ekata niyamata set wenna as wahagena dakapu hina habe karanna youth ekata niyamata set wenna friendship ekata menna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And on business news, the Hambantota International Port has joined hands with the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Small Enterprises Development Division to bring about progressive change for entrepreneurs in the Hambantota district. As a forward-thinking organization committed to the well-being of the community, HIPG is dedicated to creating meaningful opportunities for small-scale entrepreneurs in our region. The Sea Fair, supported by HIP, will showcase authentic local products, mostly indigenous to the Hambantota district, that will be attractive to cruise passengers disembarking at the port. That ends business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth ekata life ekේ change ekata niyamata set wenna as wahagena dakapu hina habe karanna youth ekata niyamata set wenna friendship ekata menna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IAM, a plan for your dream. Report.
Taking a look at the weather report, the Department of Meteorology predicts showers at times in the western and Sabaragamu provinces and in the Galle and Matra districts. The Met Department said several spells of showers can be also expected in the Kandy and Nuwara Eliya districts. It added showers or thunder showers also likely in several places in the Uva province and in the Ampara, Batiklo and Mullaitivu districts during the evening or at night. Meanwhile, the general public has been requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. The Met Department added that due to the apparent southward relative motion, the sun will directly be over the latitudes of Sri Lanka until the 7th of September. The sun will be directly overhead in Pallavi in the Kilinochchi district, Chalai in the Mullaitivu district around noon. That ends the weather report. And finally, we take a look at the economic news. The Export Development Board says Sri Lanka's earnings from merchandise exports increased by 2.18% in July 2023 compared to June 2023. As per the provisional data released by Sri Lanka Customs, merchandise export earnings in July 2023 have surpassed $1 billion mark, recording a total of $1,027.2 million. The EDB says, however, this is a decline of 11.79% as opposed to the value recorded in July 2022. This decline in merchandise exports is due to the reduced demand shown in export products, especially in apparel and textiles, rubber and rubber-based and coconut-based products. For the period of January to July 2023, overall merchandise exports decreased by 10.26% to $6,898.34 million compared to the corresponding period of 2022. That ends the economic news. And to conclude this bulletin of news, we take a look at the headlines again. The Prime Minister instructs officials to solve the administrative problems of some of the officials before the upcoming budget. The Foreign Secretaries of Sri Lanka and Thailand successfully conclude bilateral political consultations. The UN says Sri Lanka's swift recovery from economic crisis, an example to the world. Cabinet approval sought for daily allowance for answer script examinations. The Cabinet of Ministers approved to implement the simplified value-added tax system with effect from 1st of January 2024. The Public Security Minister points out that the Police Department is working on a non-political agenda and committed to protecting the law and order at the highest level. On international news, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake strikes Bali Sea and Indonesia. In sports news, Lankan bodybuilders win bronze at the 56th IFBB Asian Championship held in Beirut, Lebanon. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.